Forex. Now, about 50 illegal operators selling Forex are said to have been arrested last Monday when operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission raided a bureau de change location in Abuja. This comes in the wake of the EFCC's decision to raise a special task force across its divisions to crack down on individuals who are alleged to be degrading the naira and causing the Nigerian economy to be dependent on the United States dollar. Well, Chief Economist at SPM Professionals Paul Alaje joins us now to take a look at this seemingly extreme measure by the federal government to check the ongoing erosion of the value of the naira, government's bid to control prices, as well as the impact of all these on the economy. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul. It's always great to be in conversation with you. And I'm just going to get straight into it. Bureau de change operators, people who are licensed to sell foreign currency. How do we read this move? Because now that the naira is floating, you would assume that they would be allowed to conduct their business. So at what point does it become speculation?
Well, we need to continue to study what EFCC meant by speculation and why the raid is going on. What I can say is that the current trade by EFCC, to them, is an attempt to rescue the naira from continuous fall. I don't know if you can hear me. But what is certain is that the ongoing raid, which I think also repeated itself today, in Abuja particularly, is to discourage people from going to bureau de change for asking for FX. I think what EFCC is trying to do or to say is to implement a decision that might have come from either the Central Bank of Nigeria or the executive, that those who are trading money on the street should stop. Here is it. Whether Central Bank is still giving them such allocation or not, it's a different kettle of fish. But as today, what we know is that Central Bank is not giving such money to bureau de change. Perhaps EFCC may question as to where the source of their money is or how they've gotten such money. Those may be the question EFCC may want to ask. But here is the bigger question. Do we think that apparently these 50 people will now reverse the ongoing continuous fall of naira? The answer is no. The moment we adopted that policy on the 15th of June 2023, that we now want to float the naira, what we are saying is the fate of naira will be dependent on what it requests from the rest of the world and one is able to send to the rest of the world. From my understanding, our crude is being stolen around Niger Delta region. Instead of exporting 2.3 million barrels a day, we are currently doing less than 1.5 million barrels a day. We are doing far below that. So our real challenge is majorly supply side and partly the demand side. The medium of exchange and prediction is perhaps what the EFCC is helping to curtail with government of the day. But all of this action may translate to two different decisions. The first decision will be to put fear in the heart of people who consistently goes to such markets to demand. The second one will be, it may even cause further scarcity. And when further scarcity happens, what happens? The price may eventually go up. So the decision is neither here nor there yet until we see how we are able to solve the supply side issues in the coming period.
I'm just wondering, hypothetically, if the economic team put together by the president approached you and stated, look, we don't know what's going on, we don't know what the next move we should make to salvage the economy should be, what would your point-by-point recommendation be in order to salvage this situation?
Well, there are 12 things which I've said, and these are product of research that we need to do. First, we have inflation in our hands. We also have a naira that continues to devalue. So I will take them one after the other. I don't know how much time I have. The first thing I will tell Mr. President to do is to look at food concern. We have seen pockets of protests from Niger State, and the most recent one is in Oyo State. What that means is that there is huge food scarcity that we all know is happening. Food inflation, according to Bureau of Statistics figure, is far higher than headline inflation. So what should we do? We understand that we don't have sufficient grain. In fact, some will interpret it as though we cannot produce enough food for ourselves today. The truth is that even what to plant, we don't have sufficiently that we go around Nigeria. As a result, I would want us to have a sharp gap measure to boost food output by bringing in from other sources food grains, not food in itself. For instance, in the case of rice, paddy, not rice. Bring in paddy within 3 to 6 months for those that have the capacity to mill in Nigeria today. But that must not be the end. You know, most of the time, what you have seen in the action of government is to look for quick fixes without looking for permanent solution. The permanent solution to this will be that government must implement, between now and October, a national agricultural transformation plan. National transformation agricultural plan that will ensure that we boost our output. Nigeria requires about 1 million metric tons of grain, from maize to rice to beans, on an annual basis, based on available reports. So government is saying it wants to give 40,000 metric tons, 42,000 metric tons. Since the announcement has been made till date, go and check the price of grains in most of the market. The price of grain have continued to surge, it has continued to increase. So bringing in such, partnering with the private sector operators, Lagos State, for instance, has the largest rice mill in the country. How many has Lagos State been able to mill? And where will Lagos State get his paddy from? Is a question I've asked from the first day of announcement. Go to Adamawa State, a lot of rice mill in Adamawa, a lot in Katsina. Where will they come from? We have also seen the reaction of some as chief executive that we are going to stop people from buying in bulk. It will be a big mistake if we don't reverse that decision very quickly, because large mills need bulk purchase. So how can large mill be buying trickles and expect that the price of grains, consumable goods will be cheap? It will not be. It will be continue to increase. That is why the president will need to speak with his team at the Federal Executive Council, as well as the economic team, to have an holistic view of the ongoing issues in an attempt to solving them permanently. So my first advice will be, you need to bring in those grain now, this moment today. And we have only 90 days maximum for this grain to get our shores, and complement it with National Agricultural Transformation Plan such that we can boost supply side. If we go beyond 3 to 6 months, what is supposed to be positive will now become negative, because it will put pressure on Naira, and Naira will get even worse than we have today. So economics is like medicine. When you diagnose a case, you must know when to administer the drug and when to stop, and when a patient will need to use other form of therapy and not necessarily medication. What we have talked about is an economic medication we need to administer now, so that we can have reduction in inflation and so on and so forth. There are quite a number of other things. Another one is FX.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing it to FX, because I'd like to speak to that point while we're talking about economic prescriptions, because of course we do know that the government has now committed to raising $10 billion, which is supposed to be injected into the system. Now, of course, in the beginning of the year, we saw $2 billion out of the $3.3 billion that has been promised from African Bank coming in, and that was off of forward sales of oil. Now, my question is, what is the implication of us raising, and I use raise with quotes on it, this 10 billion, because we've already mortgaged our future oil sales. So are we creating more of a burden for future generations in order to try to see some sort of immediate respite? This 10 billion, what will it do for us, and how would it be raised?
Well, getting this from an international organization to support us so that we can come off the current economic quagmire and the pressure that Naira is faced with, we solve our problem momentarily. Again, it's an immediate solution, or a momentary solution, or what we generally call in economics a quick fix approach. They are there for a short-term measure or short gap measure. They are not supposed to be used permanently. If you check the Bureau of Statistics report or Debt Management Office report, you see that at the rate at which things are going, you have seen that custom adjust rates of what we use for import. You have also seen that it's been muted by the Ministry of Finance that Nigeria will need to adjust exchange rates in the budget and perhaps even make some adjustments in the overall budget. What does that mean? Even to service debts, we need to change the rates too. So we'll now be using about 1,300, 1,400, 1,500 for every dollar. You can check the volume of dollar we are owing today as a nation. You now know that to have devalued Naira is now counterproductive to what we need to pay back in debt service, among other things. So, yes, the money when it comes to Nigeria, it will solve some problems because we have backlog of people who have not borrowed money from us, but they have done business in Nigeria. They want to repatriate their fund, and we have to give it to them. We have importers who want to import raw material or some capital goods to the country, but we don't have sufficient dollar to give to them. According to the interview granted by the central bank to your business journal, I think your head of business, your business editor, Mr. Mofai, from the interview, I watched it very carefully. So here is the point. Even when we get that, it will solve our problem momentarily. Where is the permanent solution? Which I hope will be my last point, but I will tell you, it is supply side. Anytime we run away from supply side, which we have been running from for a long time, nearly 10 years, if you have started plantation 10 years ago, imagine the volume of cassava, the volume of maize, rice we would have by now. There is what we call coordination failure, which is what we have experienced in the last decade. Nobody wants to stay and coordinate the real work. Everybody wants food is ready. Once you can sell crude, money is available, it's shared among government and subnational, everybody is fine, let's come again next month. It will no longer work. We must take the painful step. We must go through the painful path, which includes plantation, manufacturing, production, and promotion of exports. As a result, the economic managers, which have not seen the Minister of Trade and Investment, it will play a critical role in this. Because for now, the ministry is not conspicuous. We need that ministry to join the other economic managers and researchers to plan the destiny of our future. Because the way it is now, we seem to have a manual to fly a jet and the manual to start the engine, but we don't have a manual to land. I hope we have not already in the air because we don't know what may happen. So here is it. Here is it. We need to find a way to boost supply. And in boosting supply, I've mentioned some of the things we can do in the medium and in the long term. So there are quite a number of other things that are in the kit that the president and his team, as well as governors of states and their team, must work on right now. You see, this ongoing issue is as though President Tinubu is alone. You know, others of national have left him to his fate to decide. And this is the commentary I've heard from so many persons and so on and so forth. I think it's important for President to call that meeting of the National Executive Council and the Economic Council led by the Vice President that, listen, we need to take a decision. You saw the report I saw on social online recently, I think yesterday and more importantly today, of the correlation between what has been shared to FARC and what is happening to FX. And it's been alleged that perhaps the current increase in dollar is being fueled by the excess of what is getting to subnational. Well, that is subject to verification. But statistics seems to favor it. Correlation seems to favor it. A number of data that have been done seems to favor it. And they say numbers don't lie. However, we wait for verification. What should be done? Quickly, we need to digitize all process. If we digitize the process, EFCC will not need to arrest anybody in Zone 4. Because for every dollar transaction, it will become transparent. We will not need to waste man-hour of men bearing arms lawfully to go and run after people and making a drama or mess of everything. The CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, must agree to digitalize all exchange rate, all dollar to naira process. Whether it is for subnational that want to buy, which I don't know the reason why they should, or it's an individual that need FX, we want to pay school fees, it's for health concern, it's for government importation, it's for private sector. All of them must have digital print. Any amount of money that is beyond $999 to a naira must be on digital process. That time we will know whether money share at FARC truly is going into this process or not. But if you don't bring transparency And we have left the faith of the federal saying that, well, this is a national issue. The federal government should take responsibility. I can tell you, protests have not yet happened in Abuja. It's been happening at the subnational. So it's important for all of us to smell the coffee. That for those of us that speak so much English on TV, people on the street they may not understand. But thanks for journalists like you who is bringing the information closer to the population. That Absolutely. This is exactly what is happening around you. So subnational must take more responsibility in letting these problems resolve. You can check how much has been added to subnational and what is the volume of investment that has happened at the state level.
Well, very well said. Thank you for going into such detail. Now, earlier on, you mentioned the need for us to bring in Paddy and, that there's a timeline to act. I'm just wondering, I'm using that as a premise for this question. If the government is listening to you, or this administration is listening to you and decides to take your advice, what's the timeline that we're looking at to see, things turning around? And if they decide not to listen to you, what's the timeline that we're looking at for things to really, fall apart?
2024 projection and prediction for Nigeria from economic research is a year that will be divided into two. The first half is economic concerns, which we are seeing all over the country. I granted an interview in December, which was circulated, and I mentioned 12 calendar months. The remaining half, we go beyond economic concern to social concern, and that is the one we don't want to see. And I'm hopeful that government, I can also confirm that government have started, to sort for advice and find ways to resolve some of these challenges before it gets to half of the year where you may start seeing social concern. So the protests you are seeing pocket may no longer be, because hunger, deprivation, and poverty does not understand time. It understands now. As a result, we have 3 months to bring in as many as possible supports into this country, starting with food before we start going into other aspects. But food first, which is very important, because majority of our population, now 133 million people, according to Bureau of Statistics, they are living in multi-dimensional poverty. Food is one of them, and you can see reports that was shared by that international, again, I think it's Red Cross, about 25 million people that are also suffering from food shortage. So it's important for us to look for means, and I'm not saying it must just be paddy. I'm saying most of the key grains that we consume, it may include wheat. You have heard what the Association of Bread Sellers, Bakers rather, have said, that they may be going on strike. So these are real issues we need to deal with before it is too late. 90 days window. Now, when that 90 days window, if it's not optimized and we have shortage, you need to ask, should we just start planting? Do we have enough grain to even plant to start with? And when it is planted, what will be the method? The method of Anchor Borrowers Program, where we gave money to farmers and say, don't worry, go and farm. And when you farm, it will constitute supply. With the exposure or the display of rice sufficiency in Abuja called rice pyramid. Why is rice expensive now? If you continue to deceive yourself over time, there will be a time where nobody will need to tell you that you have been playing a game of deceit. We don't have sufficiency in rice. We don't have sufficiency in wheat. We don't have sufficiency in maize. We don't have sufficiency in a number of things. But we can have sufficiency in them. If we start today to adopt a national program, national agricultural program, what does it mean? Each subnational should provide not less than 500,000 hectares, not acre, hectares of land. With support with Central Bank of Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria, Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and other ministry and agencies. Instead of dashing people money, 5,000, 10,000 naira in the name of recovered loot from some individual that have done away with our money, can we now start by saying we want to organize plantation, but those plantations will not just be there. We now cite processing plants close to them, and this can be done by private sector. In fact, beyond federal, state, partnering, commercial bank can also partner with some of these persons. Bank of Agriculture can partner. This is the painful part we need to go through. Even time is running out on it. We have 3 months to make food supply increase, and this is not my figure. FAO told us last year, around September or November, if people listen, that there will be acute food shortage within sub-Saharan Africa this year. That report was available. It was mentioned on your channel. But people are surprised that we said there will be crisis in 2024. It is not acknowledged. It was product of research. This is just the second one in 2024 that we are seeing it. We have seen that Central Bank is doing all it could or it can to ensure that it solves monetary issues. Unfortunately, this problem is beyond monetary problem. I know that Central Bank will be meeting, and there will be that meeting will be happening, I think, later this month, where MPC will be meeting. My advice is that don't.
If I can interject on the issue of monetary issues, monetary policies, exchange rate, is it time to manage this float? Or do we continue and wait for these interventions that you've outlined, the supply side, the agricultural side, food supply, and so forth? Do we need to go back to a pegged exchange rate while we manage all of these other interventions that you've pointed out?
United Arab Emirates peg its currency. It has been 3.65 to the dollar. Saudi Arabia, we used to compare Nigeria with Saudi Arabia. They are buying price more than us. Peg their currency. Who are we impressing? I have said it time and again, and the analogy is Anthony Joshua fighting with Mr. Macaroni, the popular Debo. How do you expect the two of them to fight in a boxing tournament? How many countries keep their votes in Naira apart from Nigeria? 70% of printed dollar are not even in America. The rest of the world is demanding for dollar, and we as Nigerians now believe we can float because it sounds like a classical economics. That argument has been defeated. That economic argument has been defeated many years back. Manage float is the way to go. I remember I spoke with your colleague, Mr. Bosin, regarding floating of Naira, and I spoke vehemently against it, projecting that the crisis we are having now will come. Unfortunately, we floated, we are in the middle of the crisis. To end it, if we don't know the way forward, we need to go back to where we were. But unfortunately, Naira can never be 1,000 again. Can never be. That is why before you start economic recommendation, it will go beyond emotion. It will come from the place of understanding, deep knowledge. Because when a medical doctor makes mistake, maybe on one or two patients, but when you make mistake on an economy, an entire nation may suffer, which is the crisis we are going through right now.
Okay, of course, I asked you that very important question, but I was asking, you've given us a timeline, 90 days is crucial for all these important moves to be made. But when I asked you that in the event that, that your advice is not adhered to, where do we go from here? What are we going to be looking at in 90 days?
Well, in 90 days, if we don't boost food supply, in 90 days, if we don't curtail those who are fueling parallel markets for Naira to get devalued, in 90 days, if we don't digitalize the purchase and sales of FX, in 90 days, if we don't do something about current crisis that has to do with food, we will fast-track the timeline, which should have been January to June for economic crisis, then July to December for social crisis. We will fast-track it such that instead of waiting till June, we will see social crisis even earlier. So that's what the number says. But what we need to do now, is not to wait for that to come. And I'm very confident that Mr. President will do something. I'm very confident that starting from today, if we call the central bank, the Minister of Finance, and other ministers that may be necessary for the economy, and more importantly, Minister for Trade and Investment, for them to harmonize in policy. 2, Minister of Agriculture, to start considering some of these policies, especially by providing support. Because what I've seen in the recent months is panic mode. Fire brigade approach. Let's try this one if it will work. If you see panic mode, we will overreact to economic issues. But economy has no emotion. It's factual, it's data-based, it's data-driven. That is why we cannot wait till 90 days come before we start having this implementation. Anyone who loves Nigeria We think beyond Mr. President, whether you like him or hate him. What we need right now is way forward, is solution, and a progressive movement for Nigeria. There's quite a number of other things that I think we should implement, but those that should be done in within the next 90 days should be implemented starting from now. But having a national economic plan, especially as it has to do with agriculture and manufacturing, that plan, I don't know if maybe the committee is somewhere talking, I don't know. But if we don't, it's important for us to do that. Lastly, on FX, is signaling. There is nobody signaling hope on the Naira at that level. So if you ask average Nigerians, and people may want to tweet on X or on Twitter, right now on Facebook or on Instagram, and ask them that question, where do you see Naira in the next 2 days, in the next 2 months? Then you will see where people's hope lie. Will it go up? Will it be stable? Or will it fall? You can make it. Somebody can put that on Twitter and let people vote. And it will shock you that people don't believe. So it's a job of government to make people believe that these are the things we are doing that will make Naira improve. That we take care, not all, but some. But we must complement that decision with real action as it has to do with supply side. Because as it is, it's as though we are not chasing the right things. That is this. So the signaling is not there. And if it is there, we need to come up to prove to people that we have positive signaling.
That's
These
right.
are the things we are doing, and this will be the result. In fact, this has been done in no time. Okay. So I was going to say regarding MPC.
Unfortunately, our time
I was going to say regarding...
You know, Paul Alaje, you've spoken so beautifully and you've shared such incredible insights. I do hope we can have another conversation very soon. But for today, I think, you know, the key word is signaling. I think that's a very major message. Paul Alaje, Chief Economist, SPM Professionals, thank you so much for your time today.